Hello, everyone, and welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. I'm Austin Bechtold, pleased to be joined alongside Caleb Yauger to break down the latest in Waynesburg sports as we reach now the middle of November, Caleb.
And the football team on this past Saturday wrapped up its season and kind of a conclusion of the fall season sports, but it really wasn't a way that you want to end the season in a 55-0 loss to the W&J Presidents in the I-79 backyard brawl. But Trevor Miller, he stepped in. He only made his fourth collegiate start on Saturday, went 7 of 23 for 46 yards. Definitely not something you want to see, especially going into next year, but it was just the dynamic duo, the deadly duo of W&J, Justin Haycock and Colton Jones. They both threw over 100 yards in the game. Justin Haycock at 152 yards, Colton Jones 148 yards. Haycock had 2 touchdowns and Jones had 1, but also E.J. Thompson, the running back for W&J, the senior running back. It was senior day at Cameron Stadium in Washington, but E.J. Thompson had a spectacular day as well, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground.
38 total seniors for Washington and Jefferson, and they dominated throughout the whole entire game passing-wise, 315 to the 46 of the Yellow Jackets, and in total yards, Caleb, 515 for the Presidents compared to only 175 for the Yellow Jackets. It was a struggle throughout. Team really didn't get much chemistry going as well, and the offense faltered. Waynesburg had a couple special teams oddities, really. Luke Mangus involved in both of them on a fake punt, and then also a punt that was short just at about the line of scrimmage that he picked up and ran for a first down later on in the game. That was, one of those weird type of plays that it's a live ball that you just kind of have to be aware of and kind of just stun W&J. That was kind of the weirdest thing that we saw, though, in the game, but it was mostly just a game that was all just dominated by W&J.
Yeah, and those weird plays, that the 2 fourth-down conversions that ended up being first downs, that was really the only highlights for Waynesburg. The receivers really weren't getting good targets. The running game wasn't really working. Nick Hall was the leading rusher with 85 yards. Not too bad on the day, but it's just something that you just got to stop now and just go into next year with.
Switching over now to men's basketball, the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets fell 45-42 at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse in the season opener to Oberlin. And it was a close game throughout. Now, a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of missed shots, a really low-scoring game. Oberlin did not play their season last year, and this was a game really for the Yellow Jackets to try to prove something. Weren't able to come out with a victory, but I still think in what was also great to have a packed house at home for really the first time in a long time. I think a step in the right direction for the Yellow Jackets.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned with the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse, when that place is packed, the energy is just unmatched in the President's Athletic Conference. And Matt Popek in his senior season really has to step up in these next few weeks for the Yellow Jackets because, you stop Oberlin, you only allow 45 points, but you only score 42. So that's something that you have to change in the future.
Offense definitely has to be able to step up, but where there was nothing of a lacking of offense, for lack of a better term, women's basketball. An 89-83 overtime loss at Hiram. But still a game, though, a very high-scoring women's basketball game. Avery Robinson, 21 points. Brooke Fuller ended the night, rather. In a game that really, I think, is also a positive despite the loss. A very close game. In a game that there's a lot of offense flowing, but not as much defense for the Yellow Jackets. What was your main takeaway?
The thing that is one of the more disappointing things is when you travel, Hiram's about 3 hours away. When you travel all that way and you don't put up a good fight at all, but to make it as the first game and to make it as close as it was, and also Avery Robinson going 5-11 from for three-pointers, I think that she's going to have to do that more this season, and they're all definitely on the right track.
Madison Branch had a career-high 34 points in the win for Hiram. And now turning it over to wrestling. Wrestling faced W&J this weekend, also on Saturday, at the same location that the football team played, and didn't fare it was kind of just a bad day all around for the Yellow Jackets at Washington and Jefferson, losing 27-23 against Shippensburg last week, but finishing 12 of 15 teams at W&J. And also, though, the biggest positive throughout the whole entire weekend, really, was Aubrey Wingert and the performance that she had in the cross-country championships. Caleb, once again, cross-country continues to just be the dominant, dynamic sport throughout Waynesburg.
And Aubrey Wingert, she's making school history by becoming the first two-time qualifier for the NCAA Division III championships in Waynesburg history, but also on the men's side, Jack Coakley making Waynesburg history as well, the highest finish in Waynesburg history in this kind of event. So just very positive takeaways from both men's and women's cross-country teams from Saturday's match. When
we come back here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll go into a deeper dive into the 55-0 loss for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets football team at W&J with our football analyst, Colin Rhodes, here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Here to break down the football team's loss at W&J is Colin Rhodes. Colin, thanks for coming on the show with us today. And, this is a Yellow Jackets team that has not won in Washington, Pennsylvania since 1954 and did not fare very well, giving up 55 points and scoring none of their own.
Yeah, it's really just by far their worst game of the season. They've had some blowouts, especially against teams like Grove City and Geneva. But this one, definitely the worst. Sure, it's not the most that their defense has given up in a single game. That was 66 against Case Western. But this time, they didn't score any points. It definitely a poor offensive outing. And mainly, I think that has to do with the run game not giving enough room for the passing game to work. Sure, the run game had 129 total yards. Nick Hall had 90 of those, but they didn't have any touchdowns. The passing game was left to just basically do whatever they can. Trevor Miller, he had 46 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Not the best looking. And actually, it's kind of a wonder, though, Trevor Miller wasn't sacked the whole game, because looking at the rest of it, the W&J Presidents had 6 tackles for loss in the Waynesburg backfield.
And it's something to kind of look at is the W&J at one point in the first quarter, I think it went into the second quarter as well, they had 4 straight drives where they had touchdowns. And to start the second half, they had 3 straight drives with touchdowns as well. How were they able to do that?
Well, simply put, they were able to run the ball and pass the ball in a balanced way. Not to mention they had this interesting rotation of quarterbacks coming in and out. Colton Jones and Justin Haycock came in like every other drive. Jones would do one, then Haycock would do the other. They both found success doing that, putting in 2 quarterbacks, forcing Waynesburg to change up their defense every single drive. Not easy for a defense to keep up with that. And also the run game was very good. W&J had about 200 yards rushing, and E.J. Thompson, big man, had 85 of those yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground.
So this Yellow Jackets team finishes the season 2-8 overall and 2-7 in the PAC. What's your just overall synopsis of how the season played out here in 2021?
Well, better than their last 2, where they had 0 and 1 win respectively. However, it's still nowhere where you want to be as a football program. 2 wins, not really that impressive. There were definitely some impressive games, though, especially the games against Teal and Bethany. Bethany by far their best game, but also horrible games such as the Grove City homecoming game and this last game against W&J.
And what do you think about the future for this Yellow Jackets team, especially that they're losing a few seniors on this team, and the quarterback situation may be up in the air next year? What are some of your thoughts going into next season?
Well, I think probably the biggest loss that they're going to have would be Brett Hicks in the front 7 of the defense. He's definitely been one of the biggest contributors. If I remember correctly, he was second in the season for total tackles, only behind freshman defensive back James Davis, who had a great game against Washington and Jefferson. But still, Hicks is going to be a great loss. However, we do have a lot of freshmen on the team, also a lot of young guys hopefully coming up as well. Already on the team, we have guys like Davis. We also have Brendan Tyson and Javion Smith also in the defensive backfield. On offense, for the offense, the quarterback situation, not the best, but we do have a good running back tandem with Nick Hall and Justin Flack. hopefully we'll be able to see both of them in their primes in their last season here. Justin Flack, of course, was an all PAC running back last season. Perhaps we'll see it again next season.
Colin, we appreciate you joining us to wrap up the season.
Yeah, thank you.
When we return here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll hit the hardwood with Tyler Zeman to discuss the men's basketball team here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV. Now we're going to the hardwood to talk about the men's basketball team, and here to break down men's basketball is our analyst Tyler Zeman. And it was a win for the Yellow Jackets on Saturday against Penn State Barron. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was a 60-57 win, a very close game, but the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets were able to bounce back after their loss earlier in the week to Oberlin. It was a pretty good showing from the transfer in Nijon Kirkman. He had a double-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds. He really got going in that matchup. Popek, 18 points, really led in that category as well. But it wasn't too much off the bench. They didn't get too much help off the bench. They only had 3 points, and those 3 points came from Stephen Ang, who only saw 11 minutes on the floor, which I think is something that the Yellow Jackets are really going to have to look into heading into the middle of the schedule. Is they're going to have to find ways to bring in these players off the bench and kind of get them going. They're also going to need to get more of a rotation in, because when you have, yes, you want your top 5 guys on the floor playing the majority of the minutes, but whenever you have Stephen Ang only seeing 11 minutes, Jake Sheed 15 minutes, and then 3 other players coming off the bench who all had less than 5 minutes, that your starting 5 is just going to get worn out, and it's going to lead to possibly injuries down the road, which they cannot have considering they're not really too deep.
60 points and 42 points in the first 2 games. Do you think that some of that low-scoring type of basketball that we've seen has been partly because of the lack of depth that the Yellow Jackets have used this year, and maybe more so a fatigue of the starters?
I mean, you could say that. I think also just being their second game of the season, I think they still have, some room to grow into. They're still getting used to the game, the speed, whatever. But whatever it is, Matt Popek specifically kind of really needs to get going here. He wasn't too good from the field, 7 for 19. I like it though because he didn't lose confidence. He kept shooting despite missing. I think that's really going to help him down the stretch, kind of get into a groove. But right now, it's not pretty. The Yellow Jackets were able to grind it out though.
Now, low-scoring games, like Austin mentioned, for the Yellow Jackets these first 2 games. In your opinion, Tyler, do you think that the Yellow Jackets can keep this pattern of keep it low-scoring with great defense to limit the scoring of their opponents, but also to maybe not score as much? Do you think that pattern is going to work throughout the season, or they need to change that?
I think that can work. They've played pretty good defense so far in their last 2 games. Against Penn State Barron, they out-rebounded Barron 34-33, and one of the things that kind of going into the season we were worried about is the lack of height on the team, and were they going to be able to rebound the ball? That's a good start, getting those second point chances off the glass, getting it back out to your shooters, and on defense, obviously getting the possession back and being able to then turn it into offense is something that's really going to help them. But I think right now, obviously, that going forward, this team is a very defensive team, but they have their stars on offense, they have their shooters on offense, and if they can get them going, then I think we're going to slowly start to see these scores kind of increase throughout the season.
Non-conference games are partly really just to be able to find yourself and be able to start to build an identity before you get into conference action. Do you think that the Yellow Jackets have started to do that already?
Yeah, I think that they have, and winning those conference games obviously can go a long way. I think they do need to start using these conference games to try to find some sort of rotation off the bench, get these players like Stephen Ng, like Jake Sheed off the bench onto the floor, and really let them have a bigger impact on the team going forward.
Thank you very much, Tyler Zeman, for your analysis. And when we come back, I'll be breaking down a couple of plays from the Oberlin game on Jacket Sports Weekly.
It's a Saturday night. You know what that means. Time to party. Sam is having a good time, watching sports, drinking beer, playing pong. Not a care in the world for Sam. Nobody at the party stops Sam. They let him walk out the door with his keys, even though he was stumbling, having a hard time to stand up. What happened less than 10 minutes later would change Sam's life forever.
And welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Now it's time for the play breakdown segment, and we're going to break down the men's basketball game against Oberlin. So let's get right into it. So this was the last defensive possession of the game for Waynesburg, which enabled them to take the last shot of the game. Now we're going to pause it right here. This is a typical man-to-man defense, and Waynesburg plays this very well. Keep in mind there's 21 seconds on the clock. Oberlin wasted 9 seconds to cross half court. And so Bryson Wilt, if you see on the screen, he's in the circle right there. He gets a screen set on him, and he's going to go on top, he's going to go in front of that screen. If he goes below, then the shooter could have taken the shot, but Bryson Wilt is smart in that case, and he goes above the screen, so that enables the opposition to drive in, and Najon Kirkman's there. We're going to stop it right there. Najon Kirkman comes up to the top of the key, chatters his feet, plays really good defense, makes sure the shot is just not going to go anywhere. And now Waynesburg is still playing really great defense. Oberlin really trying to get something going, but they really can't offensively. And now Waynesburg, let's see right here, Ryan Felberg is going to step in towards the free throw line and create that help side defense. And that's going to create a bad situation for the offensive guy. He has to decide whether he's going to pass it or take it in, but he turns it over, and Waynesburg wins on that possession. Now let's take a good offensive possession for Waynesburg in this case. Stephen Ang with the ball, and he gives it to Najon Kirkman. Now there's 4 guys on the perimeter for the Yellow Jackets. Bryson Wilt is down low. Lots of space in the paint, and they're spreading their guys out. Now Najon Kirkman's going to come down and set a screen for Bryson Wilt. Bryson Wilt, he's going to come towards the free throw line, and he cuts in. Matt Popek, if he wanted to, could have found Bryson Wilt right there, could have made it a right-handed layup, but he decides to keep it. Bryson Wilt instead is going to go to the corner and set a screen for Jake Scheidt. Kirkman finds Scheidt down low, one-on-one in the paint. And now keep an eye on Stephen Ang right towards your screen, number 12. He's going to see that Scheidt needs help. And he's going to come towards the corner and create an open shot for himself. But he is a shooter, but he catches defender off guard and pump fakes, goes in and takes it for the easy layup. And that's how Waynesburg tied the game. A really good offensive possession for Waynesburg. So that's going to do it for the play breakdown segment on Jacket Sports Weekly. Stay tuned for more.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Remain on the hardwood for our next topic, the women's basketball team. And here to break it all down, Joe Venzel. Joe, a big game for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets, 89-83, overtime game against Hiram. High-scoring game at that. What's your main takeaway despite the loss?
No, definitely great things coming out of that game. Like I said, on the past JSW, Leighton Croft, 17 points off the bench, a big key factor for Waynesburg, had all of the points off the bench. And if you have that in that depth for your lineup, it's going to really do great things down the road. And especially another one, Avery Robinson, 21 points in that game and 5 3-pointers made. Two young scorers on that team that can really pursue this Waynesburg team, especially against Case Western tomorrow in PAC play.
Now talk about this core that Waynesburg has with Anika Dansby and Brooke Fuller, a couple of the girls, and Casey Castro, a couple of the girls that have been there on the team for a couple of years. Just talk about their development over the years and how they're going to go into this year.
Oh yeah, especially Brooke at the center position, doing what she can in her senior year, especially with this young core around her. She's really the centerpiece of that, getting scoring 19 in that Hiram game, but going to be definitely a centerpiece, almost at 1,000 points, so they're definitely going to get her the ball more. She's definitely on the rebounds. She's had 9 last game. She's definitely going to have more coming into the season, and especially with Anika Dansby at the point guard position, getting those assists to her scorers outside, especially Brooke, but her also coming up with 9 rebounds in that Hiram game is going to be a big factor for them.
We've seen the success that Robinson and Fuller and Croft have had for this Yellow Jackets team in the past, as Caleb mentioned. Who is someone that you expect to take a step up this year and be somewhat of a surprise player that starts to emerge?
I think Marley Wolf. Marley Wolf, definitely a young core of this Waynesburg team, and she can score the ball. She had 13 points, and she played a lot of minutes, 26 minutes in that Hiram game. And if she keeps up those minutes up and the scoring up, she's really going to be a really big factor for this Waynesburg team. And another one, Avery Robinson, obviously, coming off the 21 points and 5 3-pointers made. I think she's going to do that the rest of the season.
Now, the next game for the Lady Jackets is coming up tomorrow night against the Case Western Reserve Spartans on the Waynesburg University Sports Network. But the last time that they played was back in 2019. They lost 96-79 in Cleveland. What are some of the expectations going into this game?
Well, Case Western 10-15 last year. Not a great season, but not a horrible one. Definitely a good stretch in PAC play. 1-2 so far, so definitely Waynesburg gets a win against a PAC opponent. Going to be great things moving on.
Do you think that the wins continue to stack up and that this is going to be one of the more successful seasons that the Yellow Jackets have had in recent years?
I do think so, especially with the Brooke Fuller and Casey Cashel, 2 seniors, really coming together against this young core around them, and I feel like it's going to be a great season.
Joe, thank you for coming on with us, and the women's basketball team will come back and Tuesday at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse. But a team that also had action at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse last week was the wrestling team. And breaking it all down, coming up next is Brock Owens on the Jackets Sports Weekly.
We're moving from the hardwood to the mats right here on WCTV for Jacket Sports Weekly. And here to break down wrestling is our analyst Brock Owens. And 2 matches in the past week for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets. But last Wednesday, talk to us about the matchup against Division II Shippensburg.
Yeah, against Shippensburg, it was a pretty solid showing from Waynesburg. Obviously, you mentioned Shippensburg Division II, Waynesburg Division III, so there's already kind of they're giving up a little bit there, but it was really close. It came down to the last match. Trent Patrick had a very good chance. They were tied 1-1 in his match in the 3rd period, and if he would have won that match, then Waynesburg would have won the match as a team. So it was very, very close. And yeah, Shippensburg had a few guys out, but yeah, Waynesburg had a few guys out as well. So it was pretty evenly matched as far as that goes, and they had a very good shot at winning the match, and there was a few guys who looked pretty good in their matches as well.
Moving on to the W&J Invitational, 12th out of 15 teams is where the Yellow Jackets finished, and Dylan Winters was one of the better performers for the Yellow Jackets. How do you think he fared?
Oh, he fared tremendously. I'm very impressed with what he's done so far this season. He's 5-2. He went 4-2 at the W&J Invitational, and what makes that impressive to me is that he really hasn't wrestled the last couple of years. He came in as a freshman and he was wrestling, and then he didn't really wrestle much until this year. He came back, took the spot at 133, and now here he is, 5-2. He got 3 pins in the tournament at W&J. He got a tech fall in his match against Shippensburg, and he also has a major decision, so all of his wins are bonus point victories as well. So very impressive stuff from Dylan Winters so far.
Now talk about the freshman Seth Evans, who went 2 of 2 at the W&J Invitational.
Yeah, that's a pretty good showing from him as well. And what's very good about that is Evans got his first wins as in college. He was very close, many matches, and he would get caught or he would make one little mistake, and that's all right. He's just a freshman, but this time he finished them out. He went 2-2, won 2 matches, and maybe that'll start to get the ball rolling here, and he can start putting together some more wins.
Out of the whole entire wrestling team, who's someone that we're not talking about enough that you think deserves some attention early on?
One guy that we don't really talk about much here, but could be really good down the line, is Alex Coppola. He also went 2-2 in that tournament. He got a pin, and he won his next match as well. He was in the quarterfinal match, and then he lost his next 2. He ran into a couple really tough guys. His quarterfinal match was against the number 1 seed in the tournament, and then he just lost his next match. So he's a really tough guy on that mat. He's got a lot of good technique. He's very quick, and if he really puts it all together for a few matches, he can be a really tough opponent.
Now, real quick, the Waynesburg duels are coming up on Saturday, November 20th. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to for this Yellow Jacket team this upcoming Saturday?
I'm just looking for them to finish some matches. That's really what I'm looking at. They're really close in a lot of matches, and sometimes they end up getting caught. Sometimes they end up making a little mistake at the end. Especially, that makes sense because they're a young team, So it doesn't really surprise people that they're doing that. But it's nice to see them finish matches. Like I said, Seth Evans picked up his first couple wins. I like what Luke Levanway is doing as well. So if they can finish some matches, they could have a really good outing in the Waynesburg duels.
Thank you very much, Brock Owens. And when we come back, we're going to go from indoors to outdoors to talk about the men's and women's cross-country teams with Riley Holsinger coming up on Jacket Sports Weekly.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly, here to break down the historic weekend for the women's cross-country team and the men's cross-country team is Riley Holsinger. Riley, an even more historic day, I should say, for Aubrey Wingert, becoming the first 2-time qualifier for the NCAA Division III championships in Waynesburg history. Is she the best cross-country runner Waynesburg has ever seen? Is she the GOAT of Waynesburg cross-country?
A lot of great runners have came through this program for Waynesburg University and this women's cross-country team over the past couple of years. You have the Latimer twins, Jolie Gerber, and now Aubrey Wingert. And to answer your question, Austin, I believe she is the greatest of all time when we're talking about Waynesburg cross-country. First runner to qualify for nationals multiple times here. Just a really impressive performance from her this season, not being with the team, being at Coastal Carolina all year. Comes up, runs really well regionals this past weekend, ended up finishing 8th, and she ran in muddy conditions, a very hilly course, temperatures of 40 degrees, so it really wasn't ideal weather for Aubrey to deal with this past weekend, but she excelled at it, she dominated out there, and it'll be really interesting to see how she'll do at Kentucky at Nationals this upcoming week, as she'll deal with a more flat course and hopefully a little bit of warmer weather for her to run in.
The women's team finished 11th out of 38 teams. On the men's side of things, the men's team finished 20th out of 36 teams. And Jack Coakley also making Waynesburg history by having the highest finish in Waynesburg history in this event. So talk about his performance on Saturday.
Yeah, he had a really great performance. And the one thing is, if Jordan Payne was still a runner for this Waynesburg men's team, that spot would have went to him because he was running for Penn State Harrisburg. He ended up finishing a little bit above Jack, but it was a really impressive performance from Jack. He's a junior. He'll be back next year, so look for him to do even better. And Andrew Casper, the sophomore, finished 66. So those two were really working together in that race, pacing off of each other a little bit there. Coach Chris Hardy said it was something a little uncharacteristic of the men's cross-country team, but Jack Coakley did really well. And Coach Hardy also said that Jack really likes running in conditions like the ones that he ran in on Saturday, where it was that muddy, that cold weather. He ran in the rain a little bit there. But it was a historical performance from Jack and a really great performance all around from that young men's team.
Yeah, and Gloria Reed also finished 39th overall out of all qualifiers. How do you think, though, going back to the women's side, that Aubrey Wingert is going to fare in really the whole entire grand scheme of it in Kentucky?
Yeah, one of the things that I think will really help Aubrey is that it's going to be a flat course where she's trained all year at Coastal Carolina, because it's not as hilly as it is up here in Pennsylvania. So that'll help out Aubrey, I think, a lot, just being able to run on a flat course, something that she's been practicing, really doing most of the year here. And I think that a lot of the jitters are going to be away from her since she's had that opportunity to run in nationals before back in 2019. So she's been here before, she has that experience, and I think it'll go well for Aubrey.
Well, Riley, thank you for your great coverage of the men's and women's cross country teams, and we congratulate the finishers, especially Aubrey Wingert, and good luck next week in Kentucky. But that does it here on Jacket Sports Weekly. For everyone here behind the scenes and in front of the camera, I'm Austin Bechtold. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.